Alright, what is going on, guys? It's Tazz here, and welcome back to the channel. Now today what we've got for you guys is another Flash video. And before I get into anything, I just want to say a spoiler warning for the Flash Season 3 if you guys are not caught up with it, so I'd say click off now if you're not caught up, but if you are, let's continue. So in this video, what I want to do is kind of address some of the things that happened at the end of the most recent episode, as well as talk about some of the things that may or may not happen in the coming up episode titled The Once and Future Flash. So you guys might be thinking that this is a little bit late for a trailer breakdown, and I know I've wanted to make this video for a while, but I've been holding off on it just because I wanted to sort of wait until right before the shows came back, so it's a little bit more relevant, I guess you could say, as well as I just sort of wanted to wait and see if there were any more trailers that came out, kind of like that Arrow sizzle reel trailer that came out a couple of days ago, so I just wanted to wait and see if there were going to be any more Flash trailers to come out so that I could add those into my video as sort of things to talk about. But at the end of the most recent episode, we saw Barry decide that the only way for him to actually figure out Savitar's identity would be to go to the future to actually figure it out for himself, try to go to the future, talk to the future versions of Team Flash, and have them sort of tell him who Savitar really is. So in what I guess you could call the post-credit scene of the episode, we actually saw Caitlin actually have some complications due to the surgery, and we had Cisco, Julian, as well as HR come in to try to help her out, and we're not able to save her, and she kind of died, I guess you could say, but Julian actually pulled off the sort of the metahuman power dampening necklace. He pulled it off of her, and she actually started healing because of her Killer Frost powers, started kicking back in, but if you guys remember in the episode, she sort of was saying that she would rather die than actually turn back into Killer Frost. So now that Caitlin is full-blown Killer Frost, I guess the one thing that Team Flash can take away from this is don't eat the Jello because it may result in death. Just kidding. But I mean, as Killer Frost, Caitlin technically is dead at the moment. I don't know if she consciously can still sort of figure out what Killer Frost is doing, if she's just sort of taking a backseat to everything that Killer Frost is doing, or if she really is dead and Team Flash will have to do something to sort of maybe merge the two consciousnesses back together so that maybe they can still sort of have Caitlin there, but she still has her Killer Frost powers, but she will end up being in control. But now let's move over to all of the Barry going to the future stuff, and if you guys have not seen the trailer recently, or if you haven't seen it at all, I'm gonna play it here right now.
Cisco, what happened to everybody?
That is something you're gonna have to see for yourself.
You're from before she dies, aren't you?
2024, I made it. Tell me who Savitar is. We'll stop him before he even tries.
You are gonna be so surprised when you find out.
You're in for a world of pain.
So from the trailer, we know that Barry is actually traveling to the year 2024, and if you guys didn't know, the episode is actually airing on April 25th, which means that when Barry actually does go to the future, he's going to the date on that future newspaper, if you remember, which was actually April 25th, 2024. Now, even though Barry is going to that date on the future newspaper, I don't think any of the things that were actually stated in the article will happen on the show, due to the fact that this is definitely an alternate future timeline. This is sort of a darker, more grim version of the future timeline where Iris dies. Even though I do still think that she will die, this is sort of if Team Flash sort of gives up after her death and just sort of stops everything that they're doing. I think that even if she does die, they will sort of know from this future timeline that they need to keep up what they're doing to sort of make the future a better place for everyone. And 2024 being sort of this future dark timeline where everybody kind of gives up is sort of indicated by the fact that Barry is now emo, I guess. I don't know. He sort of has that Spider-Man 3 black suit Spider-Man emo haircut going right now. That's pretty funny. But I just sort of think that everybody's kind of given up. You see Cisco is just sort of kind of raggedy looking, you know. I don't really know. But I mean, Cisco's kind of sort of looks like he's kind of given up as well. And I just think that everybody's just sort of down on everything that sort of happened recently, so maybe even in this future timeline they don't end up actually even defeating Savitar, and they just sort of are like this because they lost to Savitar, Iris died, Caitlin is Killer Frost, and just everything has just gone terribly wrong for Team Flash. And speaking of things going terribly wrong for Team Flash, we actually see Wally in a wheelchair in a later shot of the trailer. And when I first saw this, I was kind of confused because I was thinking, well, how could a speedster be in a wheelchair? Don't they have sort of that accelerated healing, regeneration power or whatever with their speed? But then I sort of thought, well, maybe what if Savitar actually took Wally's speed sort of in that final battle between Team Flash and Savitar? So maybe Savitar actually ended up taking Wally's speed because, I mean, he is technically responsible for giving Wally his speed, sort of as he was saying when he sort of trapped him in the Speed Force earlier on in the season. So that's sort of my thought, is maybe Wally lost his speed while he was fighting Savitar, and Savitar ended up maybe paralyzing him by, I don't know, maybe like stabbing him in the spine or something with the with his giant like blade or whatever. I don't know, but I mean, maybe Savitar, definitely I think Savitar had something to do with Wally being paralyzed, but I don't think that there would be any other way for him to actually sort of be in that wheelchair other than if he actually had his speed taken away. And speaking of Wally being in that wheelchair, I mean, that's just sort of another way for people to cement the idea that maybe Wally is the one who's suffering a fate far worse than death. And while that's definitely is a good point on that theory, I still think that it's Barry. I really do think that it's still going to be Barry that's suffering the fate far worse than death. I think that this is sort of just like I've said, it's an alternate future. It probably will not happen. I don't think Wally will lose his speed. I don't think he's going to get paralyzed by Savitar. And another thing that people have brought up is that maybe it's now it's Caitlin or Killer Frost that's suffering a fate far worse than death, because like she said, she didn't want to become Killer Frost. She would have rather died than become Killer Frost. And while I do think that's possible, I think that they will that Team Flash will at some point end up bringing her back, and that won't really be, as long as she doesn't end up actually killing anybody as Killer Frost, I think that she'll be okay after it. But I still think that it's Barry that's suffering the fate far worse than death, because as I've said, he's seeing everything that he's tried to work for the entire season kind of collapse around him as he's going to the future, seeing all the sort of the dark grimness of this sort of worst timeline future, as well as all the things happening around him with Caitlin turning into Killer Frost and all of the Savitar stuff, and possibly Iris even dying at the hands of Savitar. And I definitely do think that future emo Barry is definitely a good indication of the fact that Barry will be the one suffering the fate far worse than death. And while we are on the subject of future Barry, I think we should bring up the fact that we do see at some point in the trailer, we do see this future Flash looking suit, and I would assume that is actually future Barry, that Barry actually maybe our present Barry is probably in trouble, and he sort of maybe convinces future Barry to sort of put on the Flash suit once again, and we have this sort of really cool looking future Flash suit that looks really similar to maybe something out of the New 52 or something. I'm not 100% sure, but it just really looks really cool. I really hope that Barry gets to keep it, but from a lot of the behind the scenes pictures and things, you definitely can tell that Barry is not wearing this future Flash suit in present day. So I would assume that either Barry gets to keep it, and the present version of Barry gets to keep the suit and he brings it back and just sort of puts it away for a while until he's ready to wear it, or the future Barry actually does end up keeping the suit and continues being the Flash in the future. And now, one last thing that I'd like to bring up in the video before I end it is that people have been talking about how HR was mysteriously missing for basically the entirety of the most recent episode. And the one thing that I'd like to say to that is that if you guys don't know, Tom Cavanaugh, the actor that actually is playing HR, or all the other versions of Harrison Wells as well, he's actually directing this new episode of The Flash, the Once and Future Flash episode. He's actually directing that episode, so he was most likely doing a lot of work on that episode during the most recent episode, so that's the only reason why he wasn't in it until sort of right at the end of the episode. So there's no reason to sort of speculate, oh, he was gone the entire episode, so that must mean he's Savitar or something like that. It was just because he's directing the next episode of The Flash. And on the subject of Savitar, the entire point of the next episode, Once in Future Flash, is Barry actually going to the future to try to figure out Savitar's identity. And sort of what the Flash people have been saying, or sort of the actors as well as the writers have been saying, is that everybody on Team Flash will figure out Savitar's identity at different points. So I think that while maybe some people in the episode will figure out Savitar's identity, if us, the audience, do not figure out Savitar's identity this episode, I think that it would be kind of smart for them to sort of leave it out until the final episode of the season. Now, I think that that would be really, really cool, as it would be definitely very different than what they've done in the past 2 seasons of The Flash. Is they sort of revealed it around either like the mid-season finale, like they did for season 1, revealing that Reverse Flash was actually Harrison Wells, who was actually Eobard Thawne, you know, or like they did with season 2, revealing that Jay Garrick was actually Hunter Zolomon, who's actually Zoom. They did that around, like, I don't know, like episode 15 or 18, something like that. But I think that if they don't reveal Savitar's identity in this episode to the audience, they still probably, some of the characters in the show will probably figure out Savitar's identity this episode. But if we don't figure it out this episode, I think we'll actually figure it out in the finale. But, I mean, other than that, guys, I just want to know your guys' thoughts on this down in the comments. Are you guys excited for the next episode of The Flash? And are you guys kind of sad that we're down to, like, the last, I don't know, like 5 episodes? It's kind of sad, but kind of exciting at the same time. I want to know your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. But until next time, guys, it's been Tazz, and I will see you guys in the next video.